Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Gemma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I know that you do podcasts every now and again. You do them pretty regularly. You and Lexi have done quite a few.
We have, yes.
You've done a lot with Ladies Finance Club, so there's that too. Today we're going to be talking about what is money coaching, where it sits in the kind of ecosystem, why people would reach out to a money coach, how to find one, all those types of things. Maybe a way to get started though is we do like to learn about people that come on the show for the first time. It's a shame that it's taken this long, but I'm so glad that we're here. I wanted to ask, as someone who's been in the finance industry or around it for a very long time, how did you get started learning about finance? Very early days, inception story. Where did it begin?
Well, I think a lot of people say this. I just fell into finance. So I started straight out of school. I started working for a bank, one of the big four. And then I went overseas and I ended up working kind of like in an accounting, like small business kind of structure company. And we helped people navigate like how they manage. I guess it would be kind of like the equivalent to ABNs here, like how you do all your tax and your reporting and everything. So I worked in that and I absolutely loved it. And then when I got back, I went back into banking and then kind of went through the emotions through, from a teller to customer service, lending, managing kind of everything. And then where do I go now? Do I become a lender or do I become a financial advisor? And I picked financial advice and I love it.
Sure.
But from a very young age, I was very goals driven and money affects a lot of our goals. So I was always budgeting. I always had a big goal and limited money. So I was always budgeting from things from as early as I can remember. So I think it was natural that I was probably going to gravitate to a role kind of like in that kind of finance, organization planning type of field, yeah.
When you said something to me yesterday, which is really interesting, you don't hear many people say this these days. You moved out of home at 16. You went overseas at 18.
I did.
So those are like big life changes when you're really early in life.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have, I'd assume, pushed that kind of, if you want something, you got to work for it, you got to plan for it kind of mentality onto you.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, I always had really big goals, and I was probably a bit, wanting to rush through things and get things done a lot earlier than what other people kind of were even thinking that. Like, I don't remember any of my friends or people that I went to school with kind of having the goals that I had, because I'd moved to London when I was 18, but I'd been planning that since I was 14, 15 and putting money away and going to the, travel agents, and like planning out the trip and working out what visa I needed. I've been planning for years and I don't know how those kind of ideas got in my head, but I always had huge goals and I always knew that money was going to be something that was a huge contributor for that. So I always had a plan. Now it's a spreadsheet, but it was always just like a piece of paper that had mapped out things. And when I still do it now, when I feel out of control in life, or like that, something's gone wrong, or I'm just not feeling comfortable, I'm feeling anxious, going back to plans and planning and writing things out just makes me feel so much in control. So I think, I always had, a budget or a plan, goals that I was working towards. And that was, how I kept everything, feeling in control and feeling on top of things.
I feel like a lot of people would feel that way. Maybe not so early in life, but a lot of people would feel like that. I think in like the financial planning context, I'm sure you could school me on this, is folks, when they have a plan, they just feel more confident. Even if they don't follow the plan, they just feel more confident because they've got one.
Yes, absolutely. And that plan can evolve so much. Like, I would actually love to get my hands on like an old budget or an old spreadsheet, because I just evolve and they move with you. But I'd love to see like what it used to look like when I first, started working and started having these kind of plans for, my wealth. But yeah, it needs to evolve. And I think if you've got a plan, it can make you feel like you're in control and you have steps in place towards it. And then, it's just adapting as you adapt and as life changes.
Yeah, I feel like these plans are probably best drawn up when you're in a more calm state, less emotional. You've got an expert with you, because they're really important when times go bad. When things like you go through some big life change, or maybe if you're focused on the stock market falls or something like that changes, and it really can just put you in a tizzy. So having a plan is like that next step. I know what I'm going to do because I've planned this.
Exactly right. And then you can see the big picture as well. So when all these little hiccups happen, you can keep kind of focused on the plan. That's also really important. I find that when couples are managing money together, that they'll only tend to talk about money when there's a conflict. So something's arisen. Now everyone's emotions are heightened and they're like, let's talk about our budget. Now let's talk about how all of these other things. I'm like, now is definitely not the time. You want to talk about those things and have those conversations when you're both coming from a really, calm space. There's no direct conflict that is resulting in the conversation. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're actually in a really good space when you're setting your goals and it's not from a fear, scarcity, anxiety position. But yeah, you can check in on them if they help relieve that, those concerns along the way, but yeah, probably not to create them out of that mood. Yeah.
Yeah. From a position of strength.
Yes.
Rather than weakness.
Exactly.
If you could go back in time and tell the younger version of Gemma, even if it wasn't 16 or 18, but any period of your life, if you could just, jump back into that scene of your life and be like, hey, maybe think about this. And I don't mean like, hey, buy Apple shares. They went up a lot. Or buy a property.
Buy a house at 16.
Yeah, something like that. But I just mean like some advice that you would give to her. What would it be?
Okay, so I do talk about this quite a lot, and I've had a huge shift. I've had to do a lot of work around my mindset about money, my behaviors around money. Because a lot of that, I think planning and having big goals from such a young age, and also just, growing up, how we hear about money and all of those experiences all then kind of create the behaviors that we have now, whether we realize it or not. And that's what we bring into new relationships and things. So I wish that I had more compassion for myself. I didn't put so much pressure on myself. Because I have a lot of, I did have a lot of really, really guilt around spending and different things that didn't align with my goals, which life happens, right? Money is a tool for us to enjoy our life, and it doesn't always have to be part of the big picture, So I wish I just had probably some healthier habits and mindsets earlier on, because it was really hard on me, and I've had a lot of, guilt, and I put a lot of pressure on myself throughout my life. Which is really, really tough. But this is one of the things working with a money coach, is that you can work on these behaviors and you can really understand why they're there, how you can change them. And you won't get rid of them, but you can just be really aware of them, so that when they're creeping back in, you can just catch them and go, right, does this actual behavior actually serve me still? Or, is it protecting me, or is that something that I need to kind of address and change some habits?
I've got one. Well, I'm going to phase into money coaching in a second, but that's a really good point you mentioned about acknowledging those behaviors. We'll talk about them in a minute, but, just even at dinner the other night, I was talking to some fellow finance people, and they said something to the same effect. They are aware of things like limiting beliefs and these types of things. And they're instantly like, oh, what are you working on? And I'm like, oh, this thing, but I don't know about this. And they're like, sounds like a limiting belief. They can just hit it and they can be like, that seems like something you need to work through, because to us, it doesn't seem like that.
That's exactly right. Because it's our lived experiences that all day, every day, we don't actually pick up on it. And this is why talking to your friends about money, or even your relationships and things, because you don't know if something's unhealthy until you know how other people are managing and doing things. So this is why, sharing experiences, whether it's relationships, money, fitness, health, whatever it is, helps us then identify patterns and behaviors that we're having ourselves, and if that's something we need to potentially change.
So you went on to become a financial advisor, and even till this day, over 10 years, you're effectively able to give advice to people, but you chose to shift focus into money coaching.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Okay, so at the time, I didn't realize I was going into money coaching. I hadn't ever heard the term before. To be honest, I was just really burnt out from financial advice. Lots of stuff was happening in my personal life, but I was in banks and super funds and things, and it was just constant. I was just burnt out from clients. I loved helping clients, but the regulation changes, the education changes. It's just, the bar was just always like constantly moving. I had young kids, lots going on at home, and I was just burnt out. So I actually just decided I was going to have a career break, and I was like, I'm going to take 2 years off and then I'll be back into advice. And to be honest, at that point, I didn't realize that there was, like, it sounds silly now, I think, but I didn't realize how my skills would transfer into other roles. So I pretty much felt like for the rest of my working life, I can be a financial advisor or I can manage financial advisors. And I, like, the thought of those two till retirement, I was like, I can't do this. I need a career break. I just need time off, settle, and then I'll jump back into it. And in that time, it was only like a matter of weeks. And my husband, ex-husband, was at me going, why don't you just, charge people to talk to you? You know, like friends would come over for a cup of tea and they'd ask, about different things. And he was like, people will pay for that. And I'm like, I don't think they will. It's not a financial service. It's not regulated. Like, it was very much in my compliance head that this is financial advice and there's nothing outside it. Anyway, when I took that time, I was like, actually, I think this idea that he's been telling me to do forever might actually work. And I was calling it consulting at the time. And I was really just helping people like with a roadmap on, actually you need an advisor, or maybe just talk to your super fund about this and this, or actually you need a mortgage broker, or here's some information on this website, and just putting pieces of the puzzle together so people knew where to go. And then I started meeting other people because I went on socials who were like, hey, we're doing that too. Oh, it looks like we've got similar businesses. We're money coaches. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm a money coach. And it's just kind of really evolved. And now there's, amazing other advisors who felt exactly like me, felt that financial advice wasn't the right fit for them at the moment. We wanted to use those skills and really help clients. Like, I loved the 1 hour meeting with a client, but I hated then going and doing the product research and making product recommendations and putting a statement of advice together. So I was like, well, what can I do? And I just want that hour with the client where I can really, really feel like I can help and we can talk about all their concerns. And a lot of those concerns don't need a product recommendation. It's just making sure that their day-to-day is running really nicely. And that was the stuff that lights me up. So money coaching is where I've been in the last, 4 years or so.
Yeah, wow. So people listening to this would probably be asking, like, what's the difference between, and we were talking about this off air, the 3 different types of help that people typically get.
Okay.
So there's counselling, which people will be familiar with. Then there's, and by that I mean like financial counselling.
Yeah, like debt counselling.
Yeah, that sort of a thing. And then there's money coaching, and then there's financial advice. How do you distinguish, or where do you put them on, like if you were to put them on a spectrum, like where do they all sit?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I don't know how many people actually know that debt counselling and those services are around. I know not many people know what money coaching is and that it's available. But I also don't think people actually realise, like a lot of people, generalising of course, actually know what financial advice is and what to expect from it. So I think these 3 elements are really, really important. So financial counselling, like debt counselling and things, is generally a free service if you're eligible for it. And it's provided by things like people like National Debt Helpline, the Salvos, that type of stuff. And the eligibility depends on your personal situation. Usually there's an income or a debt level or something. So if you're in financial hardship and you're really worried, like going to a service like that, they'll work out if you're eligible or not. Then we have, on the other end of the spectrum, we have financial advice. So in Australia, like formal traditional financial advice, yes, it's quite expensive, but there's so much value in it. But it doesn't suit everybody. So financial advice, the reports tell us that on average, the entry level advice is like $3,500 for a standalone piece of advice. And then there's ongoing fees potentially. But actually, like when you talk to advisors and the type of advice, it goes up pretty significantly from there. So you need to be in a certain position to get a lot of value out of that. And so that's where I kind of go, well, then money coaching sits in between them. So that's generally for the people that aren't eligible for counselling, but they need to get their foundations, their fundamental things right. Maybe that is around their behaviours and their mindset. Maybe it's just how they manage their day-to-day banking and cash flow and responsibilities. But they don't necessarily need a financial advice recommendation on how they build their wealth and what products support that and their super and all of that kind of stuff. So all of these they're not conflicting. They all complement each other. And it might actually be that you start at counselling and then you graduate up to coaching and then we get you ready to go and see an advisor. The goal is always going to be in the best position to get financial advice and get the most out of that when you're ready. But potentially there's some other steps before you're ready for that.
So financial advice obviously is incredibly regulated in terms of everyone that's probably listening to this that's ever seen a financial advisor could tell you the amount of paperwork and documents. And then nowadays, the training that's involved to become a financial advisor. How about then for money coaching, if we think of it, it's kind of like the big bulgy bit in the middle that could suit so many people. Is that a regulated thing?
It's not currently, but that is something that myself and the other money coaches that I know that are from the financial planning industry, so people really similar to me, ex-advisors, that's something that we really want it to be. We're very cautious of it being heavily over-regulated so that the fee, like the cost of us being able to do this is always going to be really important. But balancing that with then having it regulated so people are protected and that it can be seen as a professional service with really quality people in it and the education and the training. So there needs to be some of that, but hopefully it doesn't go as far as what financial planning has in the past, which has then made it really difficult for advisors to actually provide advice and for clients, people to get advice, right?
Well, there was recent rumblings and I guess announcements that were made that suggested that there would be this introduction of this new type of person in Australia that's not full-scale personal advice, but someone that's kind of like that, but a little bit different. And hopefully that would bring down the cost of advice for a lot of people. But hopefully, we do get to see money coaching become more standardized in terms of maybe it's education, experience or whatever. I'll come back to that in a minute, but just to really hit home the idea of what type of person sees a money coach, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So I find there's probably a common trend with people that are getting money coaching. So personally, all of my clients will generally come from financial advisors who they have spoken to the client. The clients have reached out for help and they either aren't ready for advice. There's not enough value at the moment for the fee, the costs that are associated with providing advice. Mortgage brokers are another one, accountants, but usually other professionals that are like, hey, you actually need help. So generally people will come to a money coach and it will be just the foundation stuff. Like they make good income, but they don't know where it's going. They have nothing to show for it. Or they're really, really struggling financially and they're not eligible for coaching. And it might be, around cash flow, how you set up your bank accounts, what you're doing now, maybe it's not working and it needs a tweak. And it's just kind of stress testing your ideas. It could be totally hand holding from start to finish on how do you do a budget and how do you set it up? Or it might be just ideas and tweaking things. So really it's kind of like a sounding board. You have an hour with someone who has so much experience in finance and has seen so many people do different things that they can kind of go, well, maybe you could try this or maybe you could try that. They're not going to tell you which way to go. But it's just about working out what is working and what's not. Because the worst thing is somebody trying something, reading something in a book or doing what their friend's doing and go, this doesn't work for me. I'm bad at money and never trying again. So the coach can kind of help with stuff. So with stuff like that. So that's your foundations, just getting the basics sorted. And then other reasons people will come to me is for specific education. So they've been learning about things themselves and they want to test their learnings and just go, have I got this right? Like I think, as you know, years and years ago, we literally couldn't get enough financial information. Yeah. We were just learning from our parents pretty much and those people close around that, would talk to us about money. And now we're bombarded with financial information and education. And it's really hard to know what's actually right, what's right for you, and actually kind of, how does that apply to your life? So a lot of the time people will be like, hey, I'm on this path. I just actually need to stress test it. And, is there anything I haven't kind of considered and those types of things? It's really just, kind of stress testing their learnings. So that's really common. The foundations, then people just confirming they're on the right track. Like nobody has ever been upset for paying for an hour to be told, hey, I think you're actually doing really well. Or yeah, no, that sounds all good kind of thing. And then the third one, which we talked about before is, chat to people who have previously had a bad experience with financial advice. And usually that's because they spoke to one person and that one person either wasn't a good fit for them personality wise, or their business model, whatever didn't work. And then they've just had, been turned off the whole industry. Yeah. One perceived bad egg, but it might have just been, personality clash, or at the time it didn't make sense. So generally, it's a little bit of a soft intro into financial advice, and financial advisors aren't so scary and intimidating. And I can talk to them about, well, these are all the things we can help you with and what's the value of advice. So when they do sit in front of an advisor, they've heard it from somebody else as well. Like I'll give examples to people. I go, hey, I think if you went and saw an advisor, maybe they would charge you $5,000 or $8,000, but I think there'll be a lot of value in it, and they can do strategies you haven't, considered, and take things to the next level. And so then when they go and sit in front of the advisor and the advisor goes, oh, your advice fee is X, kind of like, oh, I heard it from somebody else who's got no benefit in this at all.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a little bit reassuring as well, but mainly just seeing that talking to somebody about money isn't as intimidating as they think it's going to be.
Well, if you think about like the hardship type things, those services are normally free, and a financial plan from like a holistic financial planner, you mentioned $3,500, and as we know, there's like that figure, but then there's like the real figure, which for most people listening to this would be a fair bit more than that.
Yes, yeah, I think like limited advice and things really skews that figures, but it's really important that when you're talking about the cost of it, that you're also looking at the value, which,
absolutely.
It's really hard to.
Yeah, it's hard because some people it's not always tangible to be like, pay this, get this. It can be incremental benefits over decades, or it can be real quick and easy wins. And of course, then it's easy to quantify. But how about then a money coach? Obviously, this is a profession. How much do people get paid? Like, what's typical for a coach?
There is so much variety out there. It really, really depends. Like with myself and most of the money coaches that I work pretty closely with, I think we kind of all sit at that $400 to $500 kind of mark for the hour. So you have an hour together, but it's never just that for the coach, right? We've done onboarding, we've prepped, and then following, like we still have requirements. Well, legally we don't, but we do because we're professionals and we've been, trained, gone through the financial planning process. So we're doing file notes, we're doing all of that other stuff. And then following the appointment, my process is to then send an email to the client that has a summary on what we talked about. It might have any like education links, resources and things, we spoke about tax rates. Here's some references for ATO. As you know, I give lots of clients I'll be like, their Rask free course here, or this is an episode to a podcast that they explain like more what we talked about. So they get this email as well. So for us, it's a kind of couple of hours work, but the client just turns up for the 1 hour. And then like ongoing, it just really depends. So depending on what your need is and who your coach is, you'll then talk to them about, hey, do we need, accountability check-ins? Is this kind of like a one thing you just come back if you need, or am I going to follow up with you? And how do you want to work together going forward? So
it sounds like a lot of people come to a money coach or come to you with like, they're not in a terrible situation, but they think they could do better, or they want the reassurance, and they know that they probably don't want to pay the full, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 now, but they just want sort of like someone to guide them on the pathway to get to that level. It's interesting that a lot of advisors refer into you too. That's really cool. That's great.
And I think the advisors I knew, well, like initially when I started doing this, I was like, how do I tell like the advisors I know, because obviously I've been in the industry for long, like what are they going to think? And they were all just actually like really relieved that then they were like, great, when clients call me, because you're in this industry to help people because you love helping people and you hate this, like people being stuck, right? So they were just like, oh, we love now that we have an option. We don't just have to send people away or be like, good luck Googling it. It's like, oh, there's actually these other options. You can go to a coach. So I'd say most of my referrals come from financial advisors.
So you have established another brand that people may be familiar with called Bent Not Broke, in addition to the consulting brand that you have as well. And it's a very interesting website. We can put a link in the show notes to it and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like a value of a coach for me personally, I didn't see a money coach, so a life coach, which I was resistive of early days, but then I realized how great it was.
Yeah.
was more like when I was going through some personal things and that sort of stuff. And I really found the value in that moment of my life. And I know that you spend a lot of time thinking about this as well. So can coaches help when you go through those moments in life, like where it's given you a curveball and you haven't expected something? Can they help in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, where Bent Not Broke came from, because I went through a separation and I was so confident with, my money and how the separation was potentially going to go and like all of that kind of stuff. And I'd been in the industry for so long and it just all went pear-shaped. And my confidence, the options that I thought I was going to have were off the table. And it was like, the main thing is, making sure that people know that they're not stuck, and that just because that goal is potentially no longer aligns with your life, or it's not achievable based on where your life direction is going to go, there's still so many options that you have. And so that's really where Bent Not Broke came from, was what, me going through my separation and realizing how hard this must be for everybody else, but also acknowledging that there's so many things. It doesn't have to be separation. There's so many things that make us feel like, our course, our road is, gone off track. It's a bit bent, but there are so many options that you have. And it's actually just a really amazing opportunity, if you want to reframe it like that, if you can, that you now have the option to realign all of your values and your goals and the financial plans and things that you have, and really take the reins and go, well, what do I want to do and what do I want this to look like? And then what are the key things that I need to do? So it's kind of like, almost like being given a fresh start in values and goals, and then a bit of a new roadmap.
You got that clean canvas that you can make whatever you want from this moment on, right? But I still feel like going through those moments, you do need that sounding board. You do need that person that's like, hey, this is where I'm at. Because they can come in less the emotion and just counsel you in a way, like coach you, I should say, to reflect and to understand what you want, how your life's going to change, like let you have those breakthroughs. You mentioned something before about feeling stuck, and that's something I did want to ask you, which is this idea, like literally everyone in our community from time to time will feel stuck. One of the things that you and I have talked about is like when people are on our education website, like they get confused just picking the courses, or they go to our podcast page and there's all different podcasts, or they go to the supermarket and there's 3 different types of baked beans, so many different choices. So I find this is really evident when people are discovering finance, whether that's for a need, like restarting after a divorce, or, their partner passes away, or whatever. It doesn't have to be a big life event. It can be something small, like getting started investing. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I think that, there's probably 2 things that happen. People are either stuck because they don't know what options that they have, and that happens to lots of us. We don't know what we don't know. If we've learned from our parents that, how they built their wealth was to buy a house, potentially pay it down and, work till they were 65, those options might not be available to us or make sense for us. So people feel stuck because they don't know the options. And then the other reason is they're overwhelmed. So it's that analysis paralysis. They're like, I am hearing that all these options are available, or this person's doing that, or my friends have just bought an investment property, or, their first home. Should I be doing that? Or, and it happens to me as well. I've got my plan on how I'm going to build my wealth, which is, and how I'm going to reach financial freedom and hit my goals, which is very different to when I was married. So I'm now on this path, but every now and then those old goals or I see friends doing something and I'm like, oh, should I be doing, and I'm a financial advisor and I still have to go, no, why do you want that? Does it make sense? No, this is why you're on your path. So you could be stuck, or you could be in this total overwhelm with all of this other cool stuff seems to be happening. And, everyone on TikTok's now talking about that. Should I be doing that? So
that makes sense. And I find that just knowing the options is probably really important. It seems like, I don't know if this is a bit of a geeky math thing, but back in school when we used to study like mathematics, it was like the tangent curve, and it would always start really steep and then kind of fall away. And I feel like that describes how people think about learning about finance. It seems so steep at the beginning, and then over time it just becomes easier and easier, and you can kind of piece it together more quickly. And that's definitely how I feel. And I think the way you broke that down is really great. Like, what are the options? That's where, someone can help, a coach, someone like that, even a family member or a friend or a community or whatever. What are the options? But then secondly, there are so many options. I could save for a house, invest in shares, put money in a savings account. I could go overseas. Like there's just so many different things that you could do. It's so easy. What about other behaviors that people might exhibit? So analysis paralysis. Are there any other common behaviors that you come across?
So fear, like anxiety, scarcity kind of mindsets around money is very, very common. And they seem to present themselves in times of stress, like, and like what's happening at the moment with inflation, the cost of living and, housing, like we're bombarded with all of these negatives. So those behaviors can really, kind of come to the surface. So I think scarcity and the anxiety around money, like limiting beliefs around earnings and things are also really, really common. And, like even if you're, you present really confidently and you've got a great job and you're, climbing the corporate ladder and all of those things, there can still be these other limiting beliefs that we have and, imposter syndrome, and that all impacts our money and how we deal with our money as well. So I think those are probably the most common. The others are, I'd see, when a couple come together and it's because like they'll have different relationships with money and generally from age 7, we're kind of forming those. So then you get together with a person that has a totally different upbringing from you and there's that clash in personalities and money behaviors, but understanding why they are the way that they are. So someone might, like spend without kind of, thinking and that kind of thing. And whereas the other person has a lot of guilt around spending and there's like conflicts that way. So I think, like our behaviors are really ingrained from us really, really early. And then later in life is where they start to stitch us up.
Yeah. They start to just kind of like fray at the seams and then everyone just realizes what's happening. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why we wanted to have this chat today is because we want to make it easier for people to engage with a coach and find good coaches. And people can follow the link in their podcast player and get matched with a coach and even book a 15-minute call with yourself, like zero obligation, free call. But if someone is out there and they're hearing this for the first time, they're like, wow, I could actually do like coaching with someone. That seems a lot more affordable for me. It seems like a good way to kickstart my long-term journey. What should they be looking for in a coach? Like, what are the things that you would look for?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I think this relates to if you're looking for a financial advisor as well. I think the most important thing, apart from qualifications if it's an advisor, is that you actually get along with the person and you gel with them, that you have a relationship where you feel like you can actually be yourself and ask them questions and that you're comfortable to actually work with this person. Like you have to feel like you can be a team. And like we all know it. There's just some people that you just don't gel with, you just don't get along with. And you want to make sure that you can actually show up and get the best out of that. So I think personality match, is really important. So if you're going to talk to a coach, have the 15-minute and make sure that, I feel like they understand me. I feel like this is somebody that I can talk to and be, open and vulnerable with. And that's the same as an advisor. Unfortunately, with money coaching, there isn't those, restrictions and qualifications and things. So I'd be talking to them about, their experience and how they,
got to where they are.
Able to be a coach. So the coaches that I kind of like associate with, I guess you can hang out with, we all have like ex-financial planning backgrounds or we've done the study around it, regardless if they were in an advice position, been in banking and finance for a long time. Some actually study psychology and stuff, which is, amazing and has so much of an impact in your money behaviors. So just talking to them about that, like we've all seen the TikTok and the Instagram ads that, I built a business for 6 figures or I paid off my credit card, talk to me. But you just want to make sure that what you're looking for advice on is actually what they've, been in experience with.
I think one of the things you could do if you're listening to this is take a look at this link in your podcast player because I believe in this as a profession. I think it's a fantastic option for people to get help. So there are some lovely ladies. If you click the link, you can see their background, read their bio, Gemma being one of them, and to learn a bit more about what a really good coach would look like, someone that's really experienced, because I think it's an emerging profession. I think it's really important, like I said, with the coach that I saw even though she wasn't like a money coach or a business coach, she helped me clean up my life so many ways and help me approach money better with my partner. So even though like I am married, me seeing a coach was really important because I brought more to the table for my partner. And I think that was really powerful. And that's not why I went there. I went there for other things. So I think that's just so good. And I think one of the things that we can also do is we can bring you back on for a bit of Q&A. It would be great to have you back on the show, Gemma. And we had Karen Ely on the show not too long ago, the wonderful Karen, who I know you know, absolute delight as well. So it's really good to be able to bring money coaching to the surface, to be able to talk with you about it, to be able to introduce the community to it. I'll put a link in the podcast description and the YouTube description for your Instagram, for your website and all this stuff. I know you're working on some things in 2025, which I'm excited about. So Gemma, this was a heap of fun. So thanks for joining me.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.